welcome to another episode of Behind the Gate with Scott and Kate. Unfortunately, Kate can't be with us tonight, so Scott Waddell here flying solo. And we'd like to thank our sponsor once again, Elm Grove Farms. And don't forget, when you're watching this podcast, to subscribe to our channel and watch all 14 episodes. Of course, you will be notified when a new episode, like the one we're going to do here in a minute, comes online, and you'll never miss an episode. So some other sponsorship news. We have a new sponsor coming on board quickly here with 12 Company Fire and Command out of Nova Scotia. They're going to be joining us. And also a brand new one, Denmark Acre Standardbred Racing and Breeding Farm. They've signed on as well for some later episodes. So very, very excited about that. But we're going to get right into it here with a special guest tonight. And going to read a little bit about our special guest just before we start. And where can I start? I mean, you've been doing some great things, and we're going to talk to Jessica Hallett here in just a moment. But here's some of the awards that she's won in the last couple of years. 2022, she was the Pompano Park Track Photographer of the Year. 2023, Saratoga Award for Individual Most Dedicated to Harness Racing. Also, the Unsung Hero in 2023 at the USHWA Awards. Also, the Hervey Photography Award recipient at the 2023 awards as well. And she also accepted the award on behalf of the group for Tioga Strong, and we'll mention that group coming up a little bit later. So first of all, Jessica, I want to really thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. I know you've also had some issues with your mom and dad. We'll talk about that as well. But welcome to the program. Glad to have you.
Oh, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, like I said, you've got a storied career. You're just a young lady, and you've done so much for harness racing, winning such awards as the Unsung Hero Award. So I know that you and I share a passion for harness racing, so should be a great discussion. I got to go back a few years, Jessica. I actually grew up right around your dad here in St. John, and I live probably about I would say half a mile from where your dad grew up, and knew him as a young kid. And of course, your dad being John Hallett, and he took off early on in his career and joined Wally Hennessy. And you wrote a neat little story about the connection between your dad and Wally. So could you tell us a little bit about that? I know the story gained some great recognition for yourself.
Yeah, anybody who knows my dad knows that him and Wally are like inseparable. They're like family. Like ever since, like you said, back in St. John, he started out just selling apples, and then he got connected with Wally and started doing like odd jobs for him. And you know, Wally taught him everything he knows, especially in harness racing. So, and to this day, my dad still asks him for advice and everything. And it was kind of an interesting story because, harness racing really is a family sport. So just to, you have Wally Hennessy, he's Hall of Famer, legend
Yeah.
in harness racing. And, you wouldn't think to have that kind of connection with the driver, but he's, like I said, he's family to us. And uh, everything I know I've learned through my dad and I've learned through Wally. So I just wanted to share that story just to, talk about them. And, that's who I was raised around. So, in Pompano Park, Tioga Downs, now Saratoga, it's just a part of me. So.
Yeah, Wally's been such an ambassador for the sport here for Atlantic Canada, being from Prince Edward Island, of course. And back when he first got his start here at Exhibition Park Raceway and got the stable going here, and your dad was working for him. I remember guys like Wally McGinnis was around the barn quite a bit. And he's retired now over in Prince Edward Island, but your dad knows him quite well. And I actually went out for Wally was my first hero as far as a harness racing driver. I went out one year as Wally for Halloween. I wore his silks out, believe it or not. So that's kind of a funny story. But in 2023, you were a double winner at the U.S. Awards. And what has it been like for you to excel on such a large scale right across the country, Jessica?
It's just surreal. Like I said, I grew up in harness racing. I grew up on the backstretch. I played in the shed row, and I grew up around all these horsemen. And when I got into the media side of it all, I was just happy to have the opportunity to write these stories and to photograph the horses. And I was just learning myself. So the more I wrote, the more I learned. The more I photographed, the more I learned about that as well. And you know, my main goal was always to get the horseman photos, because not everybody gets a win photo. So I always wanted to make sure to get that photo for that owner or trainer. And even the story, like not everybody makes it into the press. So I was always writing about, the smaller stables and the family based stables. So to go from there and then to have the opportunity to go to like the Breeders' Crown or the Hambletonian, like that's just an honor in itself. And then to join them on the big stage, it still doesn't even make sense to me. Like it just I think about it and it doesn't seem real.
Yeah, I've had a chance to go back and look at some of the articles you've written, and I share the same type of passion for writing. And you do such a fantastic job. You've done some great articles for Harness Link and Standardbred Canada, and I know U.S. Trotting uses some of your stuff as well. So I mean, you've done a fantastic job. You're definitely one of the young bright stars, and just love reading your work. So just wanted to talk about some of the awards you've won, Jessica. Which one came as the biggest shock to you when you actually won an award out of the awards that you've won?
Well, any award I receive comes as a shock to me just because I don't do what I do to win an award. But I
Yeah.
would say last year, when it came out as a double award winner for the breakthrough and the unsung hero, I was not expecting the unsung hero at all. Like, cause I don't see myself as such, and I know it's circled around the Tioga Downs, the fire, and you know, to come out with an award for that first, at first, like I felt really guilty because I was like, I genuinely did not do that for an award, and I just wanted to tell the horses stories. I wanted to do for the horsemen, something that I could do, like, because there was nothing else to do. So the fact that I was nominated and then to receive that award was just, it was the most shocking one.
Yeah, no, that's fabulous. And I know what you mean. Like I do some writing, of course, for our Facebook page, and I've done some writing in the past for some media outlets. And you don't go in there thinking that you're going to win anything for doing it. You just love doing it. And I think both you and I share that same passion for sure.
Yeah.
So you've written a number of articles for publications such as Hoofbeats. You've been featured on Standardbred Canada, Harness Link. What roles are you currently doing now, Jessica?
Right now, I still take freelance jobs with Hoofbeats, so I write for them whenever they need. I work for Daily Racing Form, DRF.
Okay,
I
DRF,
write
yeah.
a monthly column for them, and I work pretty much like every night for Standardbred Canada. So it's like I handle their press or I write stories or recaps. And then the last thing would just be Saratoga. I do features for them or recaps whenever I can, and just anybody who wants a story written, I will write that story just because I like to tell the story. So if anybody has anything, I will write it. Like I went up to Monticello and I was able to write about their retirees, or
Yeah.
there was a story through Tioga Downs, one of their horses, and I wrote about that. So just any story that could be told, I like to try to tell that story.
So do you find your inspiration through like human interest stories rather than just straight news a lot of times?
I'd much prefer, yeah, human interest stories. Let the
Yeah.
horses tell the story, let the horsemen tell the story, because everybody's got a story. everybody's got a background, a history, and especially the horses. Like, I just want people to understand the business on a personal level to appreciate it more.
No, that's awesome. And you've also done some photography work around the different tracks that you've been around. What inspires you to capture such great moments in racing?
I would say the horses, they're always doing something fun and unique and interesting on the track. Like, we have some horses that like ears flat back, they're so mad and they're focused, and other horses ears up, they're happy. Or, I love capturing the moment when they go up in the air or something happens. Like, it's like, I don't know, you just have to capture that moment. So between that and like the human emotion, because people don't understand, like, it's more than a race, it's more than just winning. It's the actual, like, you see your horse cross the finish line, it's like surreal, like it's the greatest thing ever. So when someone comes to my winter circle and they're crying or they're cheering, or even the fans, and I like to try to capture those moments.
Yeah, and I think telling stories is similar to photography because, you never know how that picture is going to turn out until, you get it and you see the actual shot that you just took. So it must be invigorating and I know you take a lot of pictures, so to find that, one or two shots that, you've won awards for. So it must just be so much fun to go through the photos that you take every race card and kind of pick out your favorites.
Oh, for sure. Like you said, I take lots of photos, and I still haven't gone through all the photos from the crown and the little brown jug last year, and I keep finding new photos and I'm like, wow, I like this one. And
Yeah.
it's a lot of fun because you never know what moment you're gonna capture, because you can't predict that. It's human behavior, horse behavior, you just gotta go with it.
And we're going to talk a little bit about females in harness racing, which I think has been um, increased spotlight over the last few years. And one example of that is Melissa Keith was recently um, named the full-time announcer for Rito Carlton in Ottawa, and it's the first time that a woman has ever secured such a position. So, how do you feel something like that is important in increasing the roles of you ladies in different capacities in harness racing?
I feel like it's most important for the next generation. You gotta inspire the young girls to go for those dreams and to look out on the track, and you see Melissa in the booth, or you see Lauren Triton as a driver, Michelle Crawford, the breeder, Linda Toscano training. It tells these little girls that, I could do that too. Like, they see them walk the horse in the winter circle, or they see their name in the program and they're like, they know they have that opportunity as well. Like, those doors are open now.
And do you have a role model that you look up to as far as females in harness racing, Jessica?
I would say first and foremost my mom.
Yeah,
She just does it all. Like, I grew up around her. That's why I never really saw the gender difference, because she inspires me. Like, I see her. She is the backbone of the barn. I'm not saying anything against my dad, but he would tell you the
yeah,
same thing. Like, she holds it all together, and everything works because of her, and she does it all. Like, it's
yeah.
inspiring to see.
You'll have to educate me a little bit here because I know when John left, he went to Pompano Park with Wally back in the day. So is that where your mom and dad met?
They actually, my dad landed in Saratoga first, and around that same time, my mom made it to Saratoga, and that's where they met, and then they went to Pompano. So
Oh,
and it's
okay.
kind of funny because we're back in Saratoga now.
Yeah, talk about coming full circle, eh?
Yeah, yep.
So speaking of horses that you either have now or have been around over the years, um, what one or two kind of stand out that you feel that you really connected with and had that special bond that we all know that you can have with the racehorse?
I would say my first would be Current Image. We called him Mainer because he came from Maine. He
Okay.
was just the best horse ever. A big giant, but a gentle giant. He was perfect mannered, and I would ride him everywhere. Like, he was perfect mannered to do anything with. So I'd say him. And Joey Pro, he's kind of the opposite. He's small. Uh his attitude, he's kind of like a punk. Like honestly, he's a brat. He likes to cause trouble. He knows what he can get away with, but he's not mean. Not a mean bone in his body. And he just tries his hardest every race day. And just the two of those, like I of course have to mention Jimbo Kimball, my very first horse that I
Yeah.
actually owned. But just there's those horses that just make the difference, and they make coming to the barn even better than it is, because it's just, they're there and they have their personalities, and there's nothing like it.
So tell us a little bit about the day in a life of yourself. What type of schedule would you keep on a daily routine?
A normal day, I usually start at the gym because I head to the barn early, and I go to the gym. My parents go the other way to the barn, and I spend a usually a couple hours there. I walk to the track, I get all my photos printed and ready, and then head home. Usually around 6, I start getting ready for Standard Canada, because that's when I work at night from 7:30, sometimes till midnight, sometimes till 1, depending on the day. So that's generally what I do. If it's a race day, it's a little different because afternoon cards versus night cards, but usually it's all about organizing photos and, just getting them all together and posted.
Now, do you find a lot of tracks that race that you publish on Standardbird Canada, for example? Do you find that a lot of tracks have their own writers, or are you basically the one that writes the recap in a lot of cases?
For Standard Canada, it's generally like all the US tracks usually have their own writers. Unless it's like a special card, like this past weekend I did Meadowlands qualifiers, Southern Oaks qualifiers, like things like that don't. When it comes to Canada, it depends. Like Mohawk sometimes sends press. Sometimes they just I usually just write, because if it's a big card, they send press. I would say it's 8 times out of 10 I'm writing the press. Yeah, it just depends on the night and the track.
Okay, that's awesome. And back to being a female in harness racing, what are some ways that we could highlight more females? Like, do you find yourself now, Jessica, when you look around the track, do you see a lot more younger females getting involved like you did when you were younger?
Well, when it comes to highlighting females, like I always go by the rule for highlighting anyone. You always want to tell their story, tell how they got into the business, what they did, and that's how you're going to inspire someone, because they can follow a similar path. But when it comes to looking around, yes, I would say, Saratoga is like a majority women trainers, and actually in the top 10, there's like, I'd say majority are women trainers. And
Yeah.
even like going to the big tracks, you see a lot more women trainers and drivers. And so I see it everywhere. Like even photographers, they're starting to be more women photographers, and it's definitely changing. But I would say I grew up in a different generation that, whereas before there was a lot less women in racing.
Yeah. And have you ever experienced any kind of pushback in your career just because you're a woman, like trying to get a position, or have you hit any type of roadblocks in the past, Jessica?
I would actually say no,
No.
quite the opposite actually, because growing up in racing, like I had every job and uh different thing you could do on the track. So everybody always welcomed me there to their barn. Nobody had a problem hiring me, anything like that. And even when I got into media, all the opportunities, like they were open. There was nothing against gender or anything like that. It was just about seeking out the opportunity and, going forward and showing your best effort. So for me, I would say it would be quite the opposite, because, when I started taking photos, sometimes you couldn't even tell if there was a horse in the frame because I wasn't good at night photos. So
Okay.
I could have been turned away from the business pretty quickly, but people, they gave me a chance and they just let me keep trying, and everybody's been helpful. Everybody's been super welcoming, especially here at Saratoga. I've never faced anything like that.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And a couple more things I got to ask you. It was certainly a tragedy what happened down at Tioga Downs, and I know Caitlin was heavily involved when they had a barn fire in Cape Breton. So tell us your experience around that whole thing, and just the humanity and just the efforts that everybody put forth in wake of such a tragic event.
Yeah, it was on that morning I got a call from my mom and she said, I just want to let you know there was a barn fire at Tioga, none of the horses made it. So right off the bat I was like instantly on social media and I was looking it up like cuz someone must have posted it, like this doesn't seem real. And it was coming out that it was like 40 horses, 30 horses, 50 horses, like everything was jumbled up. And Anne Marie Daly actually reached out to me and she said, "Do you mind drawing something and I can share it?" And that's when I did that original drawing and it got shared widely. And
Yeah,
um and then throughout the day you started hearing more reports, and like TMZ and Times and other news stories, they started picking up on it, but they were calling it I believe the one report was 22 thoroughbreds.
oh
And
wow.
just seeing that in the news, like, first of all, they got their breed wrong, and people were, like, actually arguing, they're like, "Who cares what the breed was? It was a horse." It
Yeah,
doesn't matter, 'cause that was their life. They were harness horses, they were standardbreds, that's who they were, so they deserve to be honored as such. And so I reached out to each of the horsemen, and I said, "I know you don't wanna talk, I understand if you don't wanna answer, but if you could please tell me about each of your horses and just tell me who they were in the barn, I'd like to write a story about them." So
yeah,
within the 2 days, they all got back to me, and it was hard, like, some of them,
yeah,
I talked to them on the phone, and they were just breaking down crying, and it was the hardest thing I ever had to listen to, 'cause, they're family, the horses, they're our whole world, so I couldn't even imagine it happening, and I put myself in their shoes, and it was just unbearable. And within the 3rd day, I published the story, and that was the first thing that went out and everybody shared it. And I was doing all these little blurbs on social media as well, because I was just sharing my feelings, because there was so many stories coming out and people were naming the guy who did it, and I was like, this isn't right, he doesn't get notoriety, he doesn't deserve any of this.
right.
So that's when I started writing those little social media posts, and I was writing letters to the DA and things like that, because I was fighting back against what was being pushed on social media and the regular media. So a lot of what I did was to showcase the horses, but to also tell people who they were and tell them why it matters, because some people don't understand. They think it's just livestock, and it's
Yeah,
not. Like, it's just,
yeah,
yeah, just everything. And then I drew the horses so people could put a face to the name, and uh the whole story came together. And another story came out in Trot about, like, a more in depth about the horsemen and what's gonna happen next and everything. So
yeah.
it was just about moving through the grieving process with the horsemen.
Yeah, and I don't know if your dad ever told you there was a fire in St. John as well that took the lives of a few horses back quite a few years ago. And I don't remember there being such an outpouring of affection that I witnessed with Tioga. It just seemed to really resonate, like you say, with people even outside of people that don't know much about horse racing. Really, empathized with what had happened.
Yeah, for sure. I think it was like, it's one thing if it was like an accident or even
Yeah,
like a careless mistake. Like, it was just for someone to go in there and do that on purpose, wait for the people to leave and then do it. It was just, it doesn't make sense. It still doesn't make sense to this day. And honestly, I think about it every day, because it just, I can't stop thinking about those horses and what they went through and who they were before that. And because I photographed a lot of those horses when I was at Tioga, and I knew a lot of them on a personal level because I knew their trainers.
Yeah. Well, you're definitely to be congratulated for your part in helping. I'm sure it was a healing process for the owners involved to talk a little bit about their horses and then to see it in print by yourself. I'm sure it made them feel, in a really bad situation, made them feel very nice in the end that their horses were remembered in that way.
Yeah, they did reach out to me in the like the weeks after, and they told me that and how much it meant to them, and that was even harder for me because
So
it just brought it all back. Like it's just an emotional time. Like it's just
yeah.
I don't think I'll ever forget it.
Yeah. Speaking of emotional times, I know that you were quite um, involved down in Pompano Park for a while. Of course, your mom and dad spent a lot of time there in Wally Hennessy. And tell us a little bit about what it was like to see that track close. It had such a rich and storied history, and for that to happen, it just didn't seem real to me, and I just can't imagine what it felt like for someone like yourself who was so close to the situation.
Yeah, I was there for 22 years, my whole life. Every year
Yeah,
we would travel north and then for the summer and go back for the school year. It lined up perfectly with the Pompano meet, and it was our home forever. And it's just when the doors closed, we drove out of the gate that night in April, and we drove straight to Tioga, and we all thought, we're gonna be back in August, like we're or October or November, we still thought the gates were gonna open. And
yeah,
then people were still talking it up about that up to like this year. They were saying, it's still gonna open, it's still gonna open. And now to see it's just leveled and it's actually completely gone, it that does not make sense. Like it's our home. Like that was my barn. That we had that barn forever. And uh I can tell you all the horses in each of the stalls, and uh I can think of all the memories going up and down those roads and the jog track and the grandstand, and the fact that it's just leveled. It's weird. It doesn't make sense how they could just take it away.
yeah. It must seem strange for your dad to look back to over the career, of course, starting in St. John, where there's still physically a racetrack here, but no more racing in the city that he kind of got everything started with. So it must be hard for him to look back over his career and see a couple of tracks that he got his starts at, and got his good start in racing, both closed now.
Yeah, that is one thing I did hear a lot when Pompano closed is, it's happened to everybody. Everybody has seen a track go under and just disappear, and it's a sad fact of the business, but hopefully, we can start saving tracks instead of losing them.
Yeah, 100%. And just to finish things off, Jessica, you mentioned in one of your replies there about schooling. I know that you went to school and you got a number of achievements in school. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you've majored in school, and might surprise some people to hear how much education that you do have.
Yes, I was actually a pre-med for all of my life. Like I was always on the track to becoming a doctor.
Yeah,
I majored in behavioral neuroscience and biology, and then I had four minors in pharmaceutical sciences, honors, pre-med or pre-health, and one other that I can't think of right now, but
yeah,
just I was always on the science track, so I've never taken an art course or anything like that. And when COVID hit, everything kind of shuffled around, and it was actually hard to get a medical job. And when I was going back to Florida in 2021, I had a job lined up. It was like $14 an hour, and it was about a half hour away from home. So I'd be
yeah,
spending so much in gas anyways. And that's when Pompano offered me a job, and it was unpaid. It was commission based only, and you know,
yeah.
it, I could tell you some of the things about it. Like the winner circle was like half a mile away from the finish line. So it was like, and I didn't
Oh,
really have a camera or background in photography. So when that came up, it was like completely derailed from what my pre-med. So I took the opportunity because the medical job wasn't that great either. And I didn't think I'd do good in the photography at all. I told Gabe Pruitt I'd give it 2 weeks and
yeah.
we'll see how it goes. And the more I learned, the more chances people gave me. Like it actually it worked out, and it just I was actually back on the pre-med track after Pompano closed. And then when I moved to Saratoga, that job opened up and now I'm back as a photographer. So I think these doors keep open for a reason. So I'm happy to stay right where I am.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you had any future plans to go back in the healthcare field or anything like that, or are you going to ride out harness racing for as long as it would take you? Because I know that either path you choose, you're certainly going to be successful.
I think I'm gonna ride out with harness racing and see where it takes
Uh,
me. I
yeah.
have those degrees and I can always go back to becoming a doctor anytime I want, but for right now I love where I am, and I work outside all day, and sometimes the weather doesn't always cooperate, but it's still worth it every day when I get to see horses and work with them, and the people are always great, and Saratoga here is just wonderful in itself. So I couldn't be happier.
No, that's awesome. And one more thing, got to ask you about your mom and dad. I know they recently had some health scares. Your dad had some, I think it was his appendix. I had mine out last year, so I know what that's like. But kind of update people watching how your mom and dad are doing.
My mom's good. She keeps trying to get to the barn even though she's not supposed to.
Yeah, yeah.
She just had a major spinal surgery for because she has drop foot, so she's actually been in pain for the last 5 years. Still goes to
Uh,
the barn every day, still works for the horses. Nothing stops her, nothing slows her down, but I take the car now so she can't leave the house. So that's the only thing preventing her from getting to the barn and actually working again. My dad, he got out of the hospital after his appendectomy at 12. He was back in the barn at 12:10.
I
He
know.
didn't listen to any of the doctor's orders. He just went right back to the barn. He was in the paddock an hour later. Every single person who came to the winter circle was like, "Hey, your dad's in the paddock?" I was like, "Yeah, I
Yeah.
kind of figured." So they're both doing well. He's pushing the boundaries, but horseman, you can't do anything about it.
Can't keep him down. He's a maritimer too, so I got a saying that maritimers are tougher than a $2 steak. So I
Yeah.
know that he's one tough cookie. So have you ever been to St. John yourself, where your dad's from here?
My dad says I have when I was younger, but I honestly don't remember it. I'm hoping to get back. My mom and I have like a whole Canadian tour that we
Oh,
want to
awesome.
do. Like I have a bucket list of all the things I want to do, and you know, I'm hoping to get that achieved this year.
What about Gold Cup and Saucer? Have you ever been to one?
I have not. That is the top of my
Uh,
bucket list. We are trying to get there this year because I
you've
just
gotta come.
yeah, between that and the North America Cup, like both those races, I've never like I like to try to get to every big race and
Yeah,
just those two, like especially the Gold Cup, like there's nothing like it. I've
no.
never like we watched it online last year and it was just unreal looking at the crowd through the camera. I can't imagine it in person.
Yeah, it was something to behold. And we've actually got Jordan Stratton coming on our podcast later this week, actually. And he's going to talk about his win last year. And I don't know if you've seen it or not, but the way he engaged the fans after the race was just something to behold. And it really, really made for a popular headline, just what he did here in his Gold Cup and Saucer win.
Yes, I saw that. I love to see that. I think there's nothing better than when a driver or trainer, anybody interacts with the fans like that. Like that's the key to our sport is to interact with the fans and give them that opportunity. So what he did was just amazing.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, again, thank you very much, Jessica. I really appreciate you taking time out of your schedule. I know you're busy and you've got a hectic schedule, but really, really wanted to talk to you and get to know you a little better. I've seen your name around for years, and I know your dad, so it's been a great experience to talk to you and see the passion that you have for harness racing. And I know that you have a bright future. So thanks again for joining us.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Awesome. So that's a wrap on episode 14 of Behind the Gate with Scott and Kate. And we've got a new sponsor coming on deck very shortly called 12 Company Fire and Command. And don't forget, before you leave, to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And we've got a busy week ahead. As we mentioned, we've got Jordan Stratton coming on later this week. We also have Scott Bernard, who will be hosting the first ever Hall of Fame Awards for Exhibition Park Raceway, and that's going to take place next Sunday. So he's going to be on to promote his event. So looking forward to that. And we've also got Brandon Campbell coming on next week as well. So real busy schedule. And we thank you very much for watching. So again, myself, I'm Scott Waddell, and our guest tonight was Jessica Hallett. And we thank her for joining us, and we'll see you next time here on Behind the Gate with Scott and Kate.